Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Learnivo IELTS Speaking Practice podcast, where stories teach, voices inspire, and learning never stops. I'm your host from Learnivo, and today we're talking about a very common but interesting topic, borrowing and lending. We'll explore how people borrow and lend things, from money to everyday items, and how to express your thoughts naturally in English. So grab your headphones, relax, and let's get ready to practice speaking English, the Learnivo way.
Have you ever borrowed money from someone else?
Yes, I have. I remember once I borrowed a small amount of money from a friend when I forgot my wallet at home. It was just for lunch, and I paid him back the next day. I usually try to return borrowed money as soon as possible because I don't like owing people.
Do you often borrow things from other people?
Not very often. I prefer to use my own things if I can, but sometimes I borrow simple items like a pen or a phone charger when I really need them. I think borrowing is fine as long as you're responsible and respectful about it.
Do you mind if others borrow things from you?
Not at all, as long as they take care of what they borrow and return it on time. I actually feel happy when I can help someone out. But if people forget to return things, it can get a bit annoying.
Would you lend money to someone else?
It depends on who's asking. If it's a close friend or family member and they really need it, I would definitely help. But if it's someone I don't know well, I'd probably think twice because lending money can sometimes cause problems or misunderstandings.
Do you like to lend things to others?
Yes, I do, especially when I know the person well. It makes me feel useful and kind. However, I usually only lend things that are not too valuable, just in case they get lost or damaged.
Have you ever lent something and not got it back?
Yes, unfortunately. I once lent a novel to my classmate, and I never saw it again. It wasn't expensive, but it was one of my favorite books, so I felt quite disappointed. Since then, I've become a bit more careful about lending things.
How do you feel when people don't return things they borrow?
Honestly, I feel a bit frustrated, and sometimes even a little disrespected. It makes me feel like they don't value my things or my trust. I think returning what you borrow is a basic form of politeness.
What do you usually do if someone doesn't return what they borrowed?
I try to remind them politely. Usually, people forget unintentionally, so a gentle message or casual reminder is enough. If they still don't return it, I might just let it go and decide not to lend them anything again.
Have you ever borrowed books from others?
Yes, many times. I love reading, so I often borrow books from friends who have similar interests. It's a nice way to share stories and save money at the same time. I always make sure to return the books in good condition.
Have you ever borrowed something and returned it late?
Yes, once or twice. I remember borrowing an umbrella and forgetting to give it back for almost a week. I felt really guilty and apologized when I returned it. That experience taught me to be more careful.
Do you think borrowing money can affect relationships?
Definitely. Borrowing money can be tricky, especially if someone can't pay it back on time. It can create tension or even break friendships. I think it's better to be honest and clear about repayment from the start.
Do you prefer borrowing or buying things?
I usually prefer buying things because I like the feeling of ownership. When you borrow something, you have to be extra cautious not to damage it. But if it's something expensive or rarely used, like a camera or a power tool, borrowing makes more sense.
How do people in your country feel about borrowing money?
In my country, people are generally cautious about borrowing money. They don't mind borrowing for serious things like education, a car, or a house, but borrowing from friends is often seen as a bit uncomfortable. It's considered better to live within your means.
Do you think people today borrow more than in the past?
Yes, I believe so. These days, it's very easy to borrow money through credit cards or online loans. People are more open to the idea of borrowing, especially for lifestyle reasons like buying new gadgets or going on trips, which wasn't as common before.
What are some common things people borrow?
People often borrow money, clothes, books, or small household tools. For example, students borrow stationery or textbooks, while adults might borrow kitchen items or even cars. It really depends on the situation and the level of trust.
Do you think lending money to friends is a good idea?
It can be both good and bad. On one hand, it's nice to help someone in need. On the other hand, if they can't pay it back, it might hurt your friendship. I think it's best to lend only the amount you can afford to lose.
What do you think about borrowing to buy things we don't really need?
I think that's quite dangerous. Some people borrow money just to buy the latest phone or fashionable clothes, and that can lead to unnecessary debt. Borrowing should be done wisely, only when it's truly necessary.
Have you ever borrowed something valuable?
Yes, once I borrowed a camera from my cousin for a school project. It was quite expensive, so I was very careful with it. I returned it the next day and thanked him sincerely. That experience taught me a lot about responsibility.
How do you feel about being in debt?
I feel uncomfortable, to be honest. Debt makes me anxious because I don't like the feeling of owing someone. I prefer to save money and pay for things up front, even if it takes longer.
What advice would you give to someone who often borrows money?
I'd advise them to plan their finances more carefully and borrow only when absolutely necessary. It's okay to borrow occasionally, but depending on it too much can lead to long-term financial problems. Building good money habits is much better than living in debt.
And that's all for today's episode of the Learnivo IELTS Speaking Practice podcast. I hope you enjoyed practicing with me and learned some new ways to talk about borrowing and lending in English. If you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe to the Learnivo YouTube channel, share this podcast with your friends, and keep practicing one topic at a time. Until next time, this is Learnivo, helping you speak with confidence and clarity. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next episode.